Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Commission 2nd of December. I'm just going to read out the fire drill notice. This is a meeting of the Council held in public. It's not a public meeting. There are no fire drill planned, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave by the exit nearest the large screen at the front of the room and proceed down the fire exit to the courtyard. Once it is safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also advise when it is safe to return to the meeting. We are recording the meeting this evening using our webcasting system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the council's website following the meeting. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Brockman. Has anybody else? No, that's it. Everybody else in attendance. Okay, any declarations of interest at all? No. Okay. Minutes. We'll move on to the minutes from the previous meeting. Can I get a vote? So all those in favour of approval? Thank you. Okay. First item. I hate this word. Ombudsman annual reports. This obviously was going to be by the leader of the council, but we are going to defer this on this occasion to the next meeting. Okay. We're going to move on to now to budget monitoring report number 5. Again, this now I'm going to pass over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, this report presents the financial forecast outturn position as at the end of Q2. This provides an update to the Q1 position presented to the Commission on the 9th of September. The key issues remain to be the cost of providing temporary accommodation for the General Fund, which remains a national issue, and the costs arising from disrepair cases and rental loss and void properties in the HRA. The outturn position for the General Fund has shown a small improvement since Q1, but still a projected overspend of 3.7 million. And on the HRA, the projected overspend has actually increased since Q1 to now 2.2 million. The report also highlights the implications for the medium-term financial strategy. The budget gap for future years was already significant when the budget was approved, which was 1.7 million in 26-27, rising to 7.5 by 28-29. All these pressures could increase that gap further, so work is ongoing to identify any mitigating actions against that. Addressing the position on temporary accommodation continues to be a key priority for officers, with work ongoing with working groups, looking at from a number of angles, including looking at data to provide further insights and establishing a clear forecast model, exploring the impact of prevention measures and seeing where investment in prevention could help reduce the expected costs, as well as trying to identify the most cost-effective but suitable accommodation possible. A review is also obviously underway, looking at the future of the Council's repair services and looking at where closer control might help address some of the issues of the cost of repairs for the Council. The report includes a summary of these matters, along with any other variances of note, and the detailed position by portfolio can be found in the enclosure. The next update that will be brought back to the Commission will be on the 27th of January with the position as at period 8. And just happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anybody like to start on this at all? Has anybody got anything they want to?
Done on mine.
Okay. Councillor Ansell, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, Andrew, thank you for running through the kind of the report as written. Kind of question really relating to the overspends, obviously on Q2. Is there a kind of a seasonal element to the overspends in terms of we might see kind of pressures on certain services higher at certain times of the year that might equate to a higher overspend? I'm just trying to get, kind of drill down a little bit to see, is the overspend kind of kind of in line with trends for this certain part of the year in Q2, or is, you know, obviously what we don't want is a kind of a runaway scenario where these are unexpected overspends?
So the position presented is a forecast outturn position. So what we're looking at is we have a look at what's the performance to date. So where are we at this point of year, taking account of any seasonal trends. So it will vary service by service. There's some seasonality in, I don't know, streams of income or stuff like that. But that's taken into account. So we'll look at where are we at this point in year, where are we at this point of year in other years, and therefore where we are against that. But then also looking forward to be like, what are we expecting in the next 6 months, basically before the end of the year. And then the forecast outturn is an estimate of where we think we'll be at, those sort of things. So it is factoring in any considerations around seasonality as part of that.
Councillor Ansell, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Andrew. Thank you for that. If we could turn to TA for the moment. Obviously, you said that's kind of the large element of kind of the overspend and placing a huge financial burden on the council. To what extent would you say that the measures that's being taken by the administration are starting to show in terms of keeping the spend down or lowering overspends? Or is there an element where you could say that the action that's being taken is correct but is more long term and it's going to take a bit more of a while until we start seeing that reflect in lower overspends and lower pressure on council budgets?
So just on the TA position, there's a number of angles. There's the demand angle in terms of the demand we're getting through in terms of temporary accommodation, but there's also the supply angle. So I know there's a planned process of trying to build more accommodation to help with that position, but obviously that takes time. You've had reports in the past around, for example, Dartford. That takes time to get up and running. So we're looking at a number of angles, and one of the things the overspend is driven by is when we set the budget this time last year, that was based on an assumed number of placements. We already knew that we were seeing higher placements than that at the start of the financial year, so that's predominantly where that overspend is coming from. So we're constantly looking at the demand figures so we can get a more accurate forecast, and then there's a number of work streams that we're trying to do in terms of what can we do in terms of prevention. There's obviously the supply angle and just understanding some of that data that helps us to forecast better and have a good.
Thank you. All good with that? Yeah. Councillor Mordecai.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As he comes back on, Councillor Ansell's there, he asked half the question that I already asked. So thank you very much for that. Do we know, in relation to TA and the demand, why are we getting the increase? Have we drilled down on why we're getting more demand in relation to people that are homeless or needing temporary accommodation?
I will attempt to answer it, but I won't expect to be a temporary accommodation expert. So we are, since the start of the year, we get a much more picture in terms of what the data is telling us and where people are placed, because obviously there's a whole number of placements that we have, but obviously what's driving the cost here is those temporary accommodation placements that are making use of nightly lets and bed and breakfast. So that's potentially what's driving the cost here in terms of the financial position. But obviously we have a wider issue because some of the temporary accommodation placements are based within our own housing stock, for example.
Thank you for that. And just come back on, are we seeing an increase in people that are needing temporary accommodation because basically some landlords are turning around and saying, I've had enough being a landlord and selling up?
I wouldn't like to say any certainty, but I expect that is an angle.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Murphy.
Yes, we did discuss briefly outside the fact that the no fault eviction, because of the change of law, may have caused a certain amount of influx, I believe. One of the questions I've asked is when it's gone through the first two stages, and we're not quite sure when it actually comes into law, but it's pretty soon. So I'm thinking, my question is, do we believe after that comes into law, do we believe that we will see a fall in that type of request for temporary accommodation, i.e. that sector that's been Section 21, isn't it, if I remember rightly? Having Sections 21, no fault evictions taken against them, with the new law that they won't be able to do that quite so easily, I believe. In fact, a lot more difficulty, and that, I believe, was initially one of the driving forces as well. Is that a correct sort of statement? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's discussed in the report. One of the key drivers of the pressure we're currently facing is the fact that the bill was impending. That I think there was then an increase in lots of evictions at that time, so that increased numbers we were then seeing. So then, obviously, hopefully, when the bill comes in and takes its impact, you would hope they'd then see a reduction in those sorts of things where people have more stable placements in their properties and things like that. So yeah, you would hope that then that you wouldn't get that increase, and then hopefully that would stabilise and help us in future.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to add on this? Councillor Baggott.
Yeah, bear with me while I find the right page here, because this is a disaster. Looking at pages 113 and going backwards through to 109, I think it is, which is car parking charges, where we've got an estimated income of 483,000. I'm just curious as to how accurate we are with that, and how confident we are that that's an accurate figure, given that only this year, when parking charges were being introduced, and we were asking and drilling down as to where the formula was for what the charging was, the answer we're getting was we've got no data whatsoever to be able to supply it. We're pretty much having a wild guess. So is this part of that wild guess, or have we now got more accurate information with regard to what that revenue is going to be? Because it is quite a significant amount.
And just before we answer that question, that's in relation to the next item, because that's around the budget in terms of the fees and charges.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll save it for...
You've given us a heads up.
We'll give them a bit longer to prepare for that one. Okay, we'll park that. You can be first up on the next item. Okay, so happy? Everybody's happy with that one? Okay, yeah. So it's for noting, yeah? Yeah, lovely. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Again, over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an update on the General Fund and HRA budgets and capital programme. Also included is a summary of responses from the budget consultation undertaken and the proposed fees and charges with the accompanying charging directories for 26-27. This report is an important step in the budget setting process and provides an update on the financial outlook for 26-27 and the medium-term financial strategy. As mentioned on the previous items, members will recall the MTFS, medium-term financial strategy, agreed in February, identified a budget gap at the time. As set out in the previous report, Council is facing pressures in the current year which will impact that and later years, most significant of which is temporary accommodation. So work is underway to identify ways to close the budget gap through efficiency savings and income generation. The report also sets out the key assumptions for 26-27 and beyond, such as inflation and pay award. One of the significant matters detailed in the report is the fair funding review. Further detail of this can be found in the report, but in summary, this is a major reform of how central government funding is allocated to local authorities in England, set to take effect from next year. The needs formulas which are used to estimate how much funding each council requires have not been comprehensively updated since around 2013, so it's obviously a very significant change. The government's been consulting on the proposal and the details are still continually evolving, so the final outcome will not be known until the provisional settlement which isn't expected until around the 16th or 17th of December. Because of the large scale of change in the underlying data and methodology, some councils could see significant gains and some could see significant losses in funding that they've historically received. So until this is finalised, any assessments are fairly speculative. Due to the significant bearing this has on the financial position on the general fund, the medium-term financial strategy will still be subject to significant change until that is known. Due to this, an update will be brought back to the Commission to review in January after the settlement has been announced, ahead of the budget being presented to Cabinet and Council for approval. Another point to note is our assumption in light of local government reorganisation. The proposals at the moment assume that the Council will continue to operate in its current capacity at this time until more is known further down the line. The schedule of proposed fees and charges for 26-27 can be found in Enclosure 1 with accompanying charging directories which provide information on the basis for each fee or charge. These have been reviewed in line with the fees and charges framework and increased by 5%, consistent with inflationary assumptions and the MTFS. These charges and changes aim to ensure fairness, competitiveness and income generation to support services. Enclosure 2 includes an updated 30-year business plan for the HRA for review. Key assumptions include a 4.8% rent increase for 26-27, which is equivalent to CPI plus 1%. Ongoing investment in stock condition and management of debt and reserves to maintain long-term sustainability. Enclosure 3 includes a draft capital programme. We picked up the issue with the agenda that the HRA capital programme was published, but we've shared with you the General Fund capital programme, so that's been sent round for completeness. The draft capital programme sets out planned investment in council assets, area committee allocations, and major projects such as depot refurbishment and Westgate development. These proposals have significant implications for cash flow and treasury management, which will be considered alongside the overall budget in February. Enclosure 4 includes a summary of responses from the budget consultation undertaken online between the 1st of October and the 4th of November. This was supported by a communications plan, including promotions on social media, e-newsletters to residents and businesses, as well as internal communications. A final total of 397 responses were received, and key messages include strong support for public and community safety, importance of clean and attractive neighbourhoods, and moderate support for council tax increases to protect essential services. Members are invited to note the update, review the proposals and provide comments to inform the next stage of the budget process. The fees and charges and budgets are the result of extensive work undertaken between both finance and relevant services, so we will endeavour to provide answers to any queries we may have, but there might be the odd one if we have to take it away and then ensure we get an appropriate response. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Baggott, would you like to go first? Thank you.
That's kind of you. It's okay with you, Chair. I've got two questions now, so might as well shake it up a bit. First of all, with regard to the changes to fees and charges to community halls and things like that for the activities and whatever. Now, I know that 5% doesn't sound, well, 5% sounds a lot, but when you actually look at it, it literally is 50p here, £1 there for the charges. But what the question is have we consulted with the user groups? Because it's one thing increasing the charges by inflation, but when you look at things like heating and electricity, which have gone well above inflation, if they're not going to recover their costs for just the increase in the utility costs, then they're going to be driven into a position where they're not going to be able to function. So have we had consultation with them, and what was the feedback from them in that regard?
I'm not sure what consultation we've undertaken at this stage. We'll follow up that question there. But we would always, over I believe it's a 3-year period, we'd look to recover costs for fees and charges of any provision of service. We'd look to make sure we've got full cost recovery across the 3-year period. But we'll follow up on the consultation.
Thank you. I mean, I know we get full cost recovery, but they've got to bring the income in order to give it to you as a cost recovery, have they not?
Yeah, so these are the fees and charges we set out, and we do them we'll make assessment about fees and charges, and there's obviously a piece around, we don't know what this would quite happen in terms of demand or whether demand will tail off. So this is the basis of the budget, and then we'll monitor that through our financial forecast monitoring each throughout the year to see whether what impact that's having and whether any action needs to be taken.
Okay, and you'll come back to me with regard to the consultation process. Thank you very much. Second question, and you probably, spoilers, you probably know what this is. When it comes to the car parking charges, which is page 110 through to 113, there's an anticipated revenue of £483,000 income. Now, when this was introduced earlier this year, and speaking to officers at the time, there was a formula that was laid out for how they'd calculated what they wanted from the area committees. But when you actually put them to the fire and asked what that formula was and how it worked, what they conceded was that it was very much a bit of a guess, because the fact they got no data, for instance, with Lake Meadows that had never ever charged before, so they didn't know what the usage was likely to be and what the cost was likely to be. The same with Billericay High Street. So given that this is such a large revenue amount, £483,000, how accurate do we think this is? How much confidence do we have that those figures are correct? And if they're not correct, what's the backup plan for replacing it?
So what I'd say with regards to these charges, obviously with these we have historic data to go on these ones, because these are charges we've charged a lot of times. We've got some confidence of we've received that income in the past in previous years. I think the difficulty with the change in charges and new charges are where we're looking at charging periods that we may not have looked at before. So say whether it was for certain days of the week or times of the week or certain places where we may not have charged, then the data isn't there to say this is how much income specifically for that. Whereas on bulk, looking across all our parking, we can report on this is how much income we've seen from parking overall for a number of years. So we have more confidence in an overall figure of what's coming from that then.
Thank you. I think I understood that. I'll take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bagger. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. This might be me being a bit dim, but it says on page 73, schedule of charters effective from the 1st of April 2026 for the place, Pitsea. Well, the building is not there at the moment, and it's not going to be open until autumn 2026. So why have we got projected charges from the 1st of April for a building that's not actually there? Thank you.
So I think the basis of these charges is that the place will be up and running during the financial year, so we're setting out those charges. There is a note in there to say that the hires will not be at the place in 25-26 until October. So again, obviously that building is out of action and that situation will be monitored. But the expectation is they're due to open in October 26, so that's when those charges will kick in. I think that's probably
there is another one for later on in the year, but this particular one on 73 says from April, and then there is another one later on.
We'll take that feedback.
From 26,
yes.
27, yeah.
We'll take on that feedback. I think it's just a standard format because they're normally annual charges.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Murphy.
I think perhaps what Andy was trying to get at is the figure of £450,000-ish. I think Andy was talking about in relation to the new charges in the new car parks, which I think was considered around about 40,000 each, if I remember rightly. So one presumes that 450 is including that X amount of money from the new charges, give or take. So it is perhaps, we talk about 10% of 450,000 and a give or take of 5, 10, 15% on that, as that would be reasonable, so that figure's accumulated like that. Thank you.
Councillor Baggott, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to probably sound unkind now, so I apologise in advance, but this is scrutiny, and the whole point is to scrutinise. When you go through all these charges, if it's parks and leisure, 5% increase. Sports clubs, 5% increase. User groups, activity centres, 5% increase. Recycling, waste, 5% increase. There isn't a single thing here which isn't a 5% increase. Now, to me, that doesn't look like solid budget planning of services. It looks like, let's slap 5% and everything's going to hope for the best. Because some of these services are going to have higher costs and higher charges and a differential. It's not reasonable, I think, to expect every single service in this borough, every single community group, every single leisure facility, every single recycling, every single car park, all of them to uniformly have a 5% increase in costs and for that to work, because there are different factors with it. And it just comes across as being sort of a, let's slap on 5% and hope for it. Now, am I being unkind there, or am I being unkind?
So I think there are some variations from the standard 5%, but I appreciate that that's what it is for a lot of them, and then what it averages across the board. That is just in line with suggested guidance to say, well, in terms of inflation and whatever, bear 5% in mind. So it's not just it has to be 5%, but services do then review it on the basis of what do we think that impact will be on demand? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? And need to consider that. So that's why there's some variation in there. I think you touched on, Tina touched on earlier in terms of they do 3-year reviews to say, actually look at what are our costs and does it need to be higher than that, lower than that, are we already there or thereabouts? In those interim years, they probably do go, okay, well, inflation is this and we'll work to that and see what that works to. But I don't know if you want to add anything. So yeah, just to say that they do work in terms of what them, and they do vary from different ones. The idea of the hope in the charging directory, it gives a bit of a feel for what benchmarking consultation has been undertaken. So rather than just we'll stick 5% and we don't know what's reasonable, I know services do look at actually what's on the market, what else is available out there, is that a reasonable thing, are actually we in line at the moment, and actually an increase might damage it or whatever. So that work is undertaken, which does result in some different rates, but yeah, I appreciate across the board there's probably in line with guidance, a lot of them do end up being around that 5% mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mordecai.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just have a point of clarity in relation to car parking charges? At the moment, you get 1 hour at Billericay High Street free of charge. Am I misreading this, where I see Monday to Sunday, 8 AM to 6 PM, up to 1 hour? Are we scrapping that 1 hour free of charge then, on page 111?
I think we'll have to clarify this, because this has come from the conversations with the services, so we obviously don't know the details of each line in here. We'll come back and confirm that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I've got a question. What contingency plans exist if the government funding settlements are lower than expected?
So as Andrew's mentioned, we don't yet know our funding position. So obviously we do have reserves in place should it not be as we'd hoped. But also we are facing a gap. We're hoping the funding will cover that gap. But we're also looking at actions that we can take. So actually, is there some efficiencies we can take, or income generation, to look at where we could save money to help with closing that gap, and they will be fully assessed in terms of implications of those should they need to be required. But yeah, we need to look at that. We do have reserves as an option, but obviously it's not a long-term financially sustainable option. and ideally we'd like to know the funding before December.
Thank you. Anyone else like to add anything? Councillor Baggott.
I'm still scrolling down this agenda here, you can probably tell. I'm just on page 174 now, the Towngate Theatre. Now, the Towngate Theatre brings in £215,000 based upon the projected tickets. But there has been some talk on the airwaves about the Towngate Theatre potentially being closed. So what is the plan for replacing that £215,000 income were it to close? And also, what risk are we taking when, in fact, to book acts? I know, the Panto closes in January, they're almost booking the next act the following year. Now, if it's very, very difficult to book performers and acts when they have a sword of Damocles over them that the building might not even exist within a year. So what contingency plan is there for replacing that income and also protecting revenue based upon what is effectively rumour at this point? And I will be coming back to this later, Chairman, in the work programme item. So, yeah, how are we protecting the Towngate in that regard?
So the fees and charges that are set out in the pack there assume the Towngate continues. And obviously if there is any decision about the future of the Towngate, that will be set out in terms of the implications of that loss of income. So it'll be a decision that would come to Cabinet and should be fully assessed.
So it'll be dealt with. So it's there, but if the Towngate goes, then a separate decision will be made by the Cabinet as to how to replace it then.
Yes, that would be a consideration of that decision.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. No, everybody else? Okay, I think we're all good on that one. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so that's for noting as well, yeah? Yeah. Okay, lovely. The work programme. Have we got anybody who would like to start on that one? Councillor Baggott, thank you.
Yeah, I alluded to that really. Now, just a sort of bit of backstory here. This is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And from my point of view, the whole point about Overview and Scrutiny as a commission is it is the centre of all the scrutiny. You have the subcommittees that do various jobs, but everything stops and starts via Overview and Scrutiny. It's Overview and Scrutiny that deal with call-in, it's Overview and Scrutiny that set the overall agendas, if there's task and finish groups, etc., etc., etc. Now, tomorrow night, we've got a fairly major item coming to the Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, which again is the Towngate Theatre and the operator and everything else all linked to the arena. My concern is that and you might be able to give us some input here, Chairman, that it just gives the impression that you've been bypassed with regards to where the scrutiny should actually sit. And this committee really should be having a look at something which is a fairly major and fundamental change, because if you consider the consequences of the Towngate going, it isn't too far to believe that the council offices could also go. So we were originally told in this regard that the building of the arena was going to be at no public cost. It was all going to be private sector. But now it seems there's no private sector that's yet come forward. It seems that the procurement is very much up in the air and still being formulated. We were told at one point that there were people queuing up to actually hand money over for the arena, but now that doesn't seem to be the case. This is a pretty major project. It's a pretty major impact on the borough. It's pretty fundamental to the regeneration ambitions of this administration in the town centre. And I'm just thinking that this committee has been bypassed, and I'm wondering what you're going to put on the work programme to actually redress that particular slight.
Thank you, Councillor Baggett. Like you say, I do believe that it hasn't sort of come via the overview and scrutiny, but Emma says it, the officer says here, then I don't see why we can't look at it afterwards. If we want to do that and add it to the work programme, is that right? Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. Like I say, for the residents of the borough, it seems like to be a very important part of the regeneration of the town centre. So, yeah, I don't see why not.
It is under the regeneration remit.
Oh, it's under the regeneration remit, I've been told. Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chairman. I think that's very accommodating. It is under the regeneration remit, but of course the regeneration committee is still only a subcommittee of overview and scrutiny. And ultimately, overview and scrutiny should have some sort of oversight of it at some point. But, you know, I don't want to speak for all members. My suggestion would be, yes, we do that and put it on a work programme, but I don't want to be sort of browbeating other members. If other members disagree, then this is democracy, isn't it, after all? But shall I propose it and then we vote? Or okay. Well, I propose that, yes, we review and have a look at the Towngate / arena development within overview and scrutiny.
Okay, yeah. So you, Councillor Baggett, you want to put that forward, and do you have a seconder? Councillor. Okay, so we put, yep, and we'll put that forward to a vote to add that onto the work programme. So all those in favour? Lovely. Did you want to add anything, Councillor Ansell, to that at all?
Only to say, Chairman, thank you for the opportunity just to say that you just kind of echo the points from Councillor Baggett. Really, I think obviously there's a scrutiny function that has to that this committee has to perform, and I think there's in some ways more scrutiny the better to make sure that all elements of policies and decisions are reviewed to make sure that we get the best outcomes for our residents. So yeah, just to echo that. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is anything else to add on that at the minute then? No? Anybody else? Anything? Okay. Thank you very much. That's it. Have a safe journey home.